Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Tuesday Tea Time. It is me, Icky Timey. What a great pleasure it is to hang out with you every week. I hope that you find some quality from our little gatherings, our tea times. So if you happen to really enjoy these and you haven't yet quite done it, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe and follow us on our YouTube. I love how our YouTube channel is growing steadily. So we want to get to 1,000. We're at 300. We're not that far away now. That's like almost a third of the way, right? So if you'd be able to smash it and then send it to somebody else to smash the follow, and let's get to 1,000 people. Let's get to 1,000 people. I know we can do it. Let me see what else. Okay, well, I'm really glad you guys are with us today. I'm hanging out with an amazing guy, Marco Topete. He is our Literature Evangelist Director here at Southern California Conference. He has been here with us now for quite some time. This awesome new dad, an energetic leader, amazing husband, has an epic story that I'd love for you to hear. So you don't want to miss out, because so often, right, like in life, maybe you're a Christian, maybe you're trying to figure out, are you like messed up because you go to church, but you're struggling through stuff, or can God use you the way you are? Well, you got to hear Marco's story. And I think it's going to really reinforce in you that God has a plan for your life. By the way, if you didn't know this, God has a plan for your life. You're welcome. But before we get to Marco, I do want to mention next week, we're going to have our young adult team from New Life, a brand new church plant in the Temple City, join us. It's going to be John De La Paz, Ashton Harden, and Kenneth Miranda. They're going to talk to us about planting a church during the COVID times. Could you imagine how crazy that is? I mean, the ethos of church is community. So this team of young adults had the audacity to say, you know what, we're gonna drop plant this right here during these COVID times. We're gonna talk about the amazing projects they're doing and how they've been dealing with things emotionally and mentally as young adults through this season. But since that's next week, let's get to it and hang out with Marco. Marco, my man.
How's it going?
What's up, my brother? Good to see you here digitally.
Yeah, it's good to be here, man. Finally excited to be able to come on Tuesday Tea Time and hang out with you guys.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Marco Topete is the Literature Evangelist Director here at Southern California Conference. And it just so happens that his office is literally right next door. Like behind this wall is Marco sitting there listening to all of my drama every week, every day when he comes through. So Marco, thanks for actually being on this side this week and hanging out with me.
Absolutely. And if anyone wants to know Icky's darkest secrets, reach out to me.
Dun, dun, dun. Thanks for joining us, Marco. Goodbye. No. Tell us, what are you drinking, dude?
So when I went to Bible college, we had a Japanese staff member, and she would always be drinking barley tea. So I've just random, it's been years since I've been there, but about a week ago, I told my wife that I had a craving for barley tea, and that's what I'm drinking today.
Barley
it's
tea,
Japanese
wow.
Or something like that. Apparently, it's like super common. Something that they give you at restaurants when you're in Japan, kind of like as a while you wait for your food type of thing.
Yeah. My wife likes that barley tea, man. She's all up in there. Whenever we go to a restaurant, she's always asking for that. I tend to pass on the stuff. Now, do you have it like plain, like just barley tea?
No, I add creamer. So
that's my man.
This is barley tea, and I just add creamer, and I put it in the freezer for a little bit so it can get slushy almost without diluting it with water by adding ice cubes. So I think I would change your mind if we were hang out one of these days and I make you one of these.
Bro, I think you're right. If you just drop that creamer in there and like 2 pounds of sugar, and it's on, man. I'm definitely
anything tastes better with sugar.
Right. Unfortunately, huh? Oh man. Brother, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited for us to get around to talking about your story and how God really just navigated you through your life. The title that most people, if you've seen it, the title that we've had was From Fatherless to Fatherhood, and it's really just the journey that you've gone through in your life together. So I wanted to ask, can you fill everyone in before we get to your story on what it is that you're actually doing right now in your professional life? What is your vocation at this time?
Absolutely. I'm currently serving as a literature ministries coordinator or director for Southern California Conference. And I've been there now, this September will be 4 years. But I've been involved with literature work since 2014 when I first did a student canvassing program called Youth Rush. So that's currently what I'm doing right now. And it's just been awesome to get to know our communities here in Southern California while going door to door.
And bro, so like, what does a literature evangelist director do? That could have to do with the literature evangelism as well. But what does the director do? Because like, you're always on the go, so people got to know that you're doing stuff.
Yeah. So long story short, for Southern California Conference, the three branches that we have is Glow, Youth Rush, and also Cross Trainers, which is a Bible work program for the local churches. So someone at my capacity, what I do for the Glow portion of it is I coordinate Glow orders with local churches. I go to local churches to do presentations on Glow. I give laity Glow trainings so that people know what to do with the literature once they receive it. And I do all the background boring stuff like making sure we have inventory and all that good stuff. For Youth Rush, most people know it as a 10-week summer program. But I know it as a starting in January summer program because 10 weeks is when the students get there and we do the ministry. But for someone in my capacity, I coordinate what territories we're going to go into. I coordinate with local churches of where we're going to be staying. I do recruiting at our universities and academies and churches. I also make sure to do all the boring stuff like inventory and HR stuff and all that good stuff, giving interviews and stuff like that, and recruiting young people to do ministry for the summer. And the last portion,
no rest for the weary.
Portion. And believe it or not, traveling and recruiting is like my favorite thing. You know, like I love living out of a suitcase. Like it's kind of weird, but I really don't mind it. I love staying at hotels and like just living out of a suitcase and meeting new people. And the last thing, cross training, is I scout local churches that may be needing some help in their pastoral staff and then connect them with the right youth.
Man, bro, that I'm like tired listening to you. That's like you all year round. Like you're coming in and I'm like, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to be like here. I'm going there. I'm going to go there for a week. I'm going there for a day. I'm like, dang, bro. Like, why are you paying rent? You just live in your suitcase and flop around where you need to. Let me ask you, dude, be honest. What is the hardest thing that you've had to do in literature evangelism?
Oh man, I think the most difficult thing that I've had to do in literature evangelism is the actual directing of the Youth Rush programs, I feel. I mean, we're talking about, having young students, young adults, all sleeping under the same roof. It's just, I kind of do like part-time fireman. I'm a part-time fireman where issues come up all the time and you're just putting out fires, making sure things are okay, communicating with parents. Kid got bit by a dog, making sure they have the right paperwork to go and to the urgent care and all that good stuff. So that's been, I think, and also HR stuff. HR stuff kills me. I'm a front line on the go type of person. So it's kind of funny, but the most difficult thing for me to do in literature evangelism is all like the administrative background, paperwork, all that stuff. I think that's just super hard for me, but I still do it. Yeah.
So I'm really glad you came on here, bro. For those of you guys watching along, thank you for hanging out with us this week. We're hanging out with Marco Topete. If you have any questions for Marco, drop them in here. We're about to get real with Marco's story. And one of the things that I find so enlightening about Marco is that as somebody who does this particular kind of ministry, you're almost called to be on call all the time. And you really have to make sure that you maintain a fire for yourself emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Like, you have to stay connected because you're constantly leading out teams. You're dealing with youth and young adults. You're dealing with moving pieces and HR, administration, and leadership. All of this is happening around you while you have to maintain your own family and your own sanity and your own spiritual life. So you would think that there's this false idea out there that if I hadn't trained my whole life for this, that somehow I'm not able to do this. And so I really want to lean into Marco's story today. Marco, could you just start us down the road of your epic story about Christ? Where did this all start for you? Take us from the beginning, man. Share your story with the world, would you please, bud? And along the way, as you're sharing, Marco, if any of you guys got comments or thoughts or questions for Marco, drop them in and we'll ask Marco.
Absolutely. And Icky, feel free to just interrupt me when I'm going too long or whatever you need to do. Or if you see a comment, feel free to just interrupt me, and then we can make sure to acknowledge those that are commenting. My story really started out in San Jose, California, in the Bay Area. And I was born and raised in San Jose, the rougher side of the neighborhood on the east side. And my story is kind of interesting because even though it might sound kind of crazy to some people, it was literally everyday normal stuff for everybody else that I grew up around, because everyone shared the same story. You know, we all came from a single parent home. We all had siblings that were in jail or in prison, and really not a strong direction in terms of professional development, in terms of trying to go to college or anything like that. So, you know, I had a single mom. I had 4 siblings. She was working 2-3 jobs to keep food on the table. So that left us really with a lot of time to just do whatever we wanted to do. In fact, I came across a little 8mm old school camcorder film, and I'm not sure if you guys even know what those are nowadays, but from the old school camcorders that you had to put inside of like a VHS in order to see it on TV, right? And the VCR. Yep. And I found one recently, 3-4 weeks ago in the garage. And I dropped it off at Walgreens. And I dropped it off at Walgreens, and I said, "Hey, can you put this on a thumb drive or a DVD or something?" And $75 later, I did get my product back. I didn't know it was gonna be $75, or I probably would have not done that.
Right.
But I came home and I told my wife, I was like, "Hun, this is 20 years old footage. Like, first and foremost, I love you. I don't know what's going to be on this video, but let's just watch it together." And you know, and when I put it on, it was kind of enlightening for my wife. She just loved it. But for me, it was kind of sad a little because I noticed it's just me and the boys, you know, at the park, you know, me and the boys in the garage, or like not necessarily no strong drive to do anything. So at a young age, I got swept away into drugs and alcohol. I started smoking weed when I was 10 years old. Started drinking about the same time frame. You know, when I went to 6th grade, finally got to middle school. That's when I started actually selling weed. I was kind of cultured and mentored by my older brother, who said, "Hey, you know, if you don't want that free lunch," and I think we all know what free lunches look like, you know, "I'm gonna give you a couple of sacks and you can sell them, and you can get yourself Hot Pocket and Hot Cheetos like the other kids do." And that's kind of what it was like in middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Still smoking, now doing, you know, drinking a little bit more consistently, and selling sacks every once in a while when my brother used to come over. And you know, I remember being at a park one day, my brother rolled up and I saw his car, and everybody feared my brother. Everybody thought my brother was just the coolest guy, and I wanted to be like him, you know, and I still respect him and love him. Man, I love that guy. But
yeah.
So I went over to his car, and, you know, he just opened up a bag. He's like, "Hey, as much as you can grab is yours." And I was just, you know, back in the day, we used to go to the arcades. You put a quarter in, like, the little claw went, and whatever you picked up, the little stuffed animal. That's what it reminded me of. But, you know, just grabbed a bunch of weed and went back and started selling it, started smoking it, and that was kind of my introduction to what it was. And in high school, it started getting a lot crazier, just because, you know, you're older, you see, you're older, you high school, more people around you, and And that's what life was like, man. It was just quickly
Mm,
spiraling out of control. I have a wonderful mother, never did drugs, never drank in front of me. Like she's still just heart of a lion, but unfortunately, just the pressures of life, the pressures of necessity,
mm.
kept her from actually being able. And I know that a lot of people that are
Yeah.
hearing this right now and will hear this know exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
And
Marco, I want to
it just,
pause you for a quick
yeah,
second. I want to pause you real quick second because I need to catch everybody up real quick. I just pause and consider what Marco's just sharing right now with you all. Because if you come from if you come from a certain area or from a certain a family, you may not know what this looks like, and you may be shocked by it. This is Marco Elementary. This is Marco Middle School. Middle school. This is middle school, friends. Selling and using, right? This is the reality by which Marco is living in. And this is, and I say that to only for us to recognize that Marco is not alone. This is not isolated to Marco. This is a world, a community of people that live in a lack of things. And so this is them scrambling for it. Marco, that's thank you. Let's pick up into high school. Just before you pick up in high school, I want to give a shout out quickly to Noah. What's up, Noah? Thanks for popping on here. Love you too, bro. Sending love to you from Marco and I. Marco, take us into high school, man.
yeah. So freshman year of high school, thought I was the coolest kid on the block. I was 14 years old and got my first tattoo. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget it. It
Was it
was just the words
homemade?
East Side, homemade. I mean, it was a pen. It was literally one of these with a little motor. And it was just this random dude in the garage, and he didn't have one arm because it was blown up in a fight, and he literally just with one arm. I'm surprised it came out looking pretty good. But I was in high school, and it was just I thought I thought I had arrived, as a freshman, and I kept selling drugs during that time, just predominantly weed,
Mhm.
and high school was crazy. I mean, people. I mean, I just remember going to high school with water bottles full of vodka and in class be drinking, and I mean, it was just kind of like high school was kind of what you see in some of those ghetto movies. Like it was real. Like the teachers, some cared, most didn't. And just kids did whatever they wanted to do, super disrespectful, just not in class, just hanging
Mm,
out. And what ended up happening, I think a real turning point in high school was that when I entered into my sophomore year of high school, I got into some problems with a certain group on campus, and they started to actually threaten my life. And I didn't really necessarily cared much for it. I mean, I had my own little group of friends that I used to hang out with and do some stuff with. So, but one thing that really concerned me was one day I got home and I was parking in front of my mom's house, and I was trying to parallel park right in front of our little home that we had, and I noticed that there was this Mustang that came around the corner with their lights off, and
mhm.
so I looked at the Mustang through my rear view, and I was like, well, that's odd that they're driving with their lights off. It was a little bit later in the evening, and finally the car pulled up at my neighbor's house, and I saw two men get out, and they approached my mom's house, and they were like trying to look over the fence and the window and so forth, and I remember rolling down my window at that point, and one of the men turned around and looked at me, and he said, "Hey, are you Marco?"
Mm,
And I've never seen this man in my life, So
mm.
when they asked that, you better believe I said, mm-mm. I mean, I
Right.
was a kid. I was a kid,
Yeah,
I was
for
14,
sure.
15 years old. These were like two men, you know.
Mhm.
And I said, mm-mm. And he's like, do you know if he lives here? And I was like, no, 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 I don't know who lives there, but it ain't Marco. And they both turned around, got back into the car, and left. And for me, that
Ooh.
was a wake up call. That for me, that was like, this is getting too close to home. I mean, this is where my mom is, my little sister is, and stuff like that. So I went inside and I told my mom that I wanted to leave. I didn't want to be in San Jose anymore. And
Wow.
um, and so that's when she told me, where do you want to go? And at that time, I had an aunt of mine, my tia Socorro, and Socorro always told me since I was a little kid that if I ever wanted to, I can actually go and live with her. Since I was a little kid, and I felt like it was time to take her up on that offer.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Lord, real talk.
Yeah.
And where did your
So
aunt live?
she lived out in this little no-name town called Kalinga. It's
Kalinga.
45 minutes 45 minutes outside of Fresno. And she was out there, and from one day to another, my mom took me to high school, grabbed my transcripts. Next day, packed my bags. I didn't have much. I mean, I was a youngster, and she dropped me off at my tia Socorro's house. I moved in with her, and everything was good. Everything was cool, until I think it was not long after that she said that she had sold the property and that she was moving. And I said, "Oh, where are you going?" And she said, "Oh, we're moving to Arkansas."
Ooh.
And I was like, "Arkansas?" Like I don't remember from geography, but is that like the next town over, or where's Arkansas? And so
Right.
I got
Right.
into the truck. I got into the truck with my cousin Fern, and didn't get out the truck for 3 days. Like this was serious. I was like,
Right.
when are we getting to Arkansas? And so that right there is pivotal for two reasons. Reason number one, my cousin Fern, who had a background that I knew of, like he was in car clubs out in Fresno and well respected and so forth. Um, I noticed how gentle he was, and it didn't add
Mm,
up to the stories that I used to hear about him. So I was like, what's wrong with
mm,
this guy? And for 3 days, I mean, talk about a captive audience. I couldn't go anywhere. We were
right.
on I-40 literally for 3 days. And he just told me about Jesus for 3 days. He told me about how good God was and how he'd given his life to Jesus and all this stuff. And I'm just trying to process what's up with this guy. He looks different. And when we get to Arkansas, it was the first time ever that I lived with a Christian family. I mean, this is,
Wow.
I'm 15 years old. This is my first exposure at Christianity. It's through this family.
Mm.
And they took me in. They took me in like a son. And in the beginning, I was hard headed. I remember the first Saturday that went by, I got a knock on my door. I said, "Oh, come in." And my aunt looked in and she goes, "Hey, we're getting ready for church." And I was like, "Oh, my aunt doesn't know. I don't go to church." you know, I don't go to church. So I
Right,
told her, I
right.
was like, "Oh,
Sorry. Yeah,
see, I
wrong room, wrong room.
sorry, but I see you guys when you guys get back." And she was like, "Oh, okay, okay. Well, while you're here, you know, you're gonna go to church." And I was like, "What the?"
Oh, she's
I
from the
wanted to
old
go home,
school.
and I was like super old school, and I was like,
Right.
"Man, like I'm like 4 states away from home. I can't even go home if I wanted to." But that impression right there literally planted a seed that took a while to germinate. I mean, sometimes when we hear the gospel or we hear about
Yeah.
God's love towards us, don't get discouraged if it doesn't happen overnight.
Mm,
Because she planted a seed that took a while to germinate, but that was my first picture, Icky, at living with a
mm.
Christian family.
Whoo, man, that's powerful,
Yeah,
man. So then you
yeah.
you eventually made your way back to the West Coast, right?
Yeah, yes. I was there for about a year. I did my sophomore year of high school in Van Buren High School. Now, if you want to
Here.
turn this real into a real comedy show, we'll do a part two, and I can just tell you stories about Van Buren High School while being the only Mexican boy in this all-white school. I mean, it was just
It is
culture shock.
Arkansas.
It was culture shock. I mean, back
Right,
where I was from on the east side, like the only white people you ever saw were the police. Like this
right.
was literally, it was just insane. But that's for another
Uh,
story. But I eventually
you
took
must have
Bible
been a
studies for my
unicorn though,
cousin.
bro. Like,
I
whoa.
yeah, I got a bunch of stories, but I eventually took Bible studies for my cousin Fern,
Awesome.
and I was impressed to give my life to Jesus. In January
Mm.
28th, 2006, I got baptized. And I wanted
Woo!
to come home. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wanted to come home and share my newfound faith with my family in my neighborhood. My aunt told me it was too soon, but I didn't really necessarily pay attention to it, and I went back after my sophomore year of high school, and it was just a different ball game coming back home. When you're with a
Yeah.
family that prays before they eat, that has family worship in the evenings, that go to church on Saturday mornings together, and so forth. And now you're just back in the hood where like you're at that time I had just turned 16, going into my junior year of high school,
Mm.
and and I try to be faithful. Like I was, going to church by myself as a 16-year-old, and it lasted for a few months, but the environment I was in, with no real mentorship or someone to kind of hold my hand through this young journey of being a Christian now,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
definitely played a role into me losing my grasp and losing my faith ultimately.
Wow. Tell me about that turning point, that moment where God woke you up and set you on the path that you're on today.
Oh man, like one thing I've learned, is God's love pursues the sinner.
Woo. Come on, man.
So if you find yourself feeling sinful, then that's the only thing God needs in order to desire you like crazy. And it's
Mm,
crazy because God just loves sinners. Like he's
mm,
infatuated by sinners. So here I am, young man back in San Jose. I lose my faith. I stop going to church. And it's kind of crazy how the world works too, because I remember thinking to myself, like, man, I want to get into, start selling drugs again.
right.
And when I thought that, the same day, my older brother was at a gas station, and he bumped into a friend of his that he met while they were both locked up years ago. And the thing that came out of his nickname was Crazy, was, "Hey, if you need weed, I got it." And then my brother connected that to me telling him that I needed weed. So right there, it started an actual relationship that went on for years. Crazy took me under his wing. He mentored me, and he really taught me what it meant to run an actual business on the streets.
Wow.
And when I saw Crazy, I mean, he was a neighborhood celebrity. He had the brand new European cars. He had the houses on the nice side of San Jose, and everybody knew him at every red light. When we used to drive together, I mean, he was all I ever wanted to be like.
Mm,
Because of Crazy, like it was just crazy. Like he, the rappers I used to listen to, the Bay Area rappers I used to listen to, I was hanging out with because of him, and it was just an unreal, um, underworld perspective of just all these drug dealers. And it made it more
wow.
tangible for me because I said, I want to be like Crazy. And he would tell me all the things I wanted to hear, like, hey man, you're a YG, you're growing up, and you're doing well for yourself. You're not getting lost in all that gang stuff. Like you're focused on your money, you're focused on your business. I'm gonna help you, I'm gonna hook you up, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And I was just eating it up because keep in mind, I never had anyone to affirm me when I was
Yeah.
growing up. And I think that we underestimate the power of affirmation. When
Yeah.
someone
Preach, man.
recognizes something you do and affirms you and says, "You're doing a good job. I'm proud of you." Or simple little words like that. And he was given, even
Hmm.
though it was bad stuff, I was still getting affirmation. So God is just too much, man, because during this time, I also unfortunately just started to fall lower and lower and lower. I used to be like, those green thumb hippies, as long
Yeah.
as it's weed, it's all good. Like, you'll never see me doing anything else. Like, you can keep all that man made stuff, like, I'm
Right.
okay.
Right.
I got too much respect for myself. I'm going to just smoke weed. That's it.
Right.
And I through that, it started with weed, but through that exposure to drugs, then it went to cocaine every once in a
Mm,
while. And then through that exposure with cocaine, then it went to, oh yeah, it's the weekend. Why not pop some ecstasy?
mm,
And oh, it's Wednesday. I'm hanging out with this group. Why not do a little shrooms? You know,
right.
and little by little, I just started to really uh, get lost in drugs. And I never felt like I was a drug addict because I had money. I
Right.
wasn't living on the street. I wasn't holding a little sign that said, feed me. So looking back, I definitely was a drug addict. I mean, I was just gone. Like I was a goner, and I was popping pills more consistently, doing lines more consistently, smoking weed every day, drinking every day, and my life was quickly just spiraling out of control. And through all of this that I just mentioned, literally through all of this that I just mentioned, I was on God's mind.
Whew. Come on, man. Ah, real talk.
Why? I don't know. he He all on his mind. Like it's crazy. Like I think sometimes like I don't think we understand the love of God, Icky. Like,
Come
you
on,
know,
man. You,
there's some people that just like, oh man, God can't love me because of this. God can't love me because of that. Like
mm,
the very things you're falling into is the reason why God loves you that much more. Like he
mm,
yearns for you and he desires to see you better. And he allowed something to happen that literally rocked my world. It was 2009, and in 2009, I went out to see some people, and we went out to a bar. And on the way home, unfortunately, I never made it back. And the next morning, I woke up and I was handcuffed to a hospital bed.
mm.
There was a sheriff sitting next to me. It looked like he was just waiting for me to wake up, and finally said, "Are you Marco Topete?" And I said, "Yeah, that's me." And he said, "Good. I just want to let you know that you killed your friend last night. I hope you have a nice life."
Ooh.
And at that point, he gets up and just walks out of the room. Now, understand that that was like someone just dropped a brick on my head.
Yeah. Ooh.
I,
Mm.
I didn't necessarily really remember what happened the night before, but when I heard that, I saw some legs next to me, which I assumed was all the passengers in my car, but apparently it was just someone else. And
Mm.
on the way home from the bar, I lost control of my car, and it cost my dear friend his life.
Wow.
And it's just kind of crazy because, you know, I for two reasons. Reason number one is is the decision sometimes that we make in a moment can and will affect the rest of your life.
Mm. Truth.
You know, like for me, that that changed the rest of my life driving that night.
Wow.
For my friend Abraham, it ended his life
Mm.
getting into that car that night. And it was just crazy because from there I went to Fresno County Jail. It was up in Fresno, California. And in Fresno County Jail, you better believe I had some time to really start thinking about my choices.
Wow, wow. If you're catching up with us, I am hanging out with Marco Topete and we are doing real talk today. He is sharing his story and it's moving. If you're just catching up, you're gonna have to rewind later and just catch up with us because we're talking about the power of God. And don't get distracted by this whole story really is about what where God is willing to go to find us and the plans that he has for our life in spite of ourselves, in spite of us. He's got this deep, profound love. And if maybe you're sitting here watching this and you're thinking about, is there any hope for my life? Is there something worthy of me right now because of who I am? God has a plan for your life. He loves you. He's in love with you, and he's still got plans for you. Marco, let's pick up from there, my bro. Tell us what happened next and how that led you to where you are today.
You know, so I was in Fresno County Jail for a little bit, and about 2 weeks later, I received a call from the sheriff that told me that I was being bailed out. I was a little confused. I knew that my family didn't have that type of money, but when I was bailed out and I came out of Fresno County Jail, I saw that there was a familiar car waiting for me in the front, and it was crazy.
Mm.
And I got into the car and Crazy looked at me. He's like, "Man, bro, like, I told you I was going to take care of you. I told you I had your back. Don't worry, we'll get a lawyer. You'll do just a couple of years in prison. You'll be out." In my mind, I'm like, "Couple of years in prison? Like, I've never been in prison."
Right.
I can't believe he said it so relaxed. And but of course, I wasn't showing that. I was in the car like, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. It's
And
cool. Yeah, 2 years. Yeah, ain't nothing.
2 years. So we get back home, and I had this burden now that I wanted to pay him back. So the very next morning, literally, I picked up another cell phone and I got right back to the street. And the crazy part about it was I had made a bunch of promises when I was sitting in Fresno County Jail.
Mm.
And one thing I've learned in my Christian experience is how is the fact that God is not looking for promises, because
Mm.
he understands that if we make a promise to him, there's a 99.9999% chance that we're going to break it.
Right.
So he's really not looking for promises. He just wants us to open our hearts to him, you know? And
Yeah.
so I made a bunch of promises, broke a bunch
Our
of
promises
promises.
are so fragile, aren't they? Our human promises are so
Fragile,
fragile.
fragile. He's
Yeah.
not looking for promises. He just wants you, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so what ended up happening was about 10 months later, this all happened November of 2009, September of 2010. I get a phone call from Crazy asking me to go over to the place where it was near my home. And when I was hanging out there, he gave me a call and said, "Hey, I need you to come over." Well, I actually fell asleep looking for a ride because I couldn't find a ride to go over. My last conversation with Crazy was I called him and I said, "Hey, I cannot find a ride, bro." And he said, "Bro, I paid almost 20 grand to get you out of jail and I drove 4 hours to Fresno to pick you up. I know that you can find a ride."
Mm.
I mean, talk about pressure. I felt like I really needed to be there. So we hung up and I continued looking for a ride and I fell asleep. I woke up maybe a couple hours later, someone yelling on the phone if I knew who did it. Who did it? Were you there? And I was confused. And finally, when he caught his breath, I said, "Bro, what are you talking about? Who did what?" And finally he told me, he said, "Crazy is dead." And I let that sink in for a little. I said, "What do you mean Crazy is dead? I just talked to him." He said, "Nah, bro, someone got to where he was at and killed everybody there."
Ooh.
And when I heard that, I knew that I should have been there. And I knew that if I would have been there, I probably would not be here.
Mm.
And I remember I prayed a simple little prayer. And I will never forget this prayer, how simple it was. Sometimes I feel like the more simple we keep our prayers, the better. And this is what
Yeah,
I said.
true.
I said, "God, if there's still a place in heaven for someone like me, please help me."
Mm.
Not long after that, I got a knock on my front door. And when I opened it, it was San Jose Police Department. They read me my rights and dragged me to jail. Apparently, something had happened in my case that I caught in 2009 with that car wreck. And they took me up to my little jail cell, this time in Santa Clara. And when I got to my jail cell, I saw something that still gives me goosebumps to this day.
Mm.
It was a carving on the wall that said the following: "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." Now, to anybody else, that would have been just a coincidence that this backslidden Christian just so happened to be brought to this jail cell where there's a scripture carved across the wall. But to me, it was God's voice clearly, because that was the verse I had chosen 6 years earlier in Arkansas when I was baptized. That moment right there, Icky, I knelt down and I said, "Lord, I'm here. I'm a drug addict. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a liar. I burned every bridge I could think of. But I'm here and I want a new start."
Woo.
And he took me out of that jail cell. And when he took me out of that jail cell, guess what? I was still drinking. I was still smoking. But I started adding Bible study to it.
Mm.
I
Brother,
started
you
to
better
read
testify.
my Bible even though I was still a drunk. I
Come
started to
on.
read my Bible even though I was still a drug addict. I remember, Icky, one day I was sitting at San Jose Central Seventh Adventist Church, and my phone rang in the middle of the service, and I walked out because I had to deliver a sack. I mean, I was seeking God with all of my filth and all of my junk, and God accepted me just like
Woo.
that. He
Come
didn't
on
tell me,
now.
"Marco, clean up your act before you come to me." He didn't tell me, "Marco, you better get rid of those drugs before you walk into my temple."
Mm.
He accepted me just like that, held my hand. And by God's grace, that's when I started my faith journey with him.
Yes, yes, yes. Chills, bro. Chills, chills, chills right now. Maybe you're catching this with us. You might be drunk watching this. Maybe you're a little high right now while you're watching this. Maybe you're going through something right now while you're watching this. I want you to know God is still coming after you. Like he loves you. Like you may be in something right now, but he's got you. He's got plans for your life. Marco, preach, brother, preach. Oh man, that's
So
good. Okay, okay. Let's
I
keep
started
going.
going to
Keep coming
church,
with you, man.
Icky. I went to every service I could. You know, I was told I was going to do 5 to 10 years in prison. So I was like, man, like I need to get close to God. If I'm gonna be in
Right.
prison for 5 to 10 years, I need to be close to him. So I was going to church. I was doing Bible studies. I was doing all that stuff that I can get my hands on. And God put a burden on my heart to be a missionary. So I said, well, Lord, you know, you hear about prison ministries, people coming in on the weekends and then leaving. What better ministry than someone who's actually there with them? Like I'll be there with them all day
Mm.
long for 5 years. So that was my
Right.
goal. That was like where my mind was going and so forth. And but he had different plans. After my case was coming to trial, I remember getting ready to go to trial. And now, keep in mind, this is 2 years later. So now this is December of 2011, two
Mm.
years after that car wreck. And through this experience of drawing closer to God and studying the Bible, he started to give me the ability to say no to the things I used to be enslaved to. So now
Mm.
I started to put away the drugs, and it wasn't overnight. I mean, it was a battle. I mean, we're talking about relapse after relapse after relapse after relapse. But
That's
eventually,
right.
by God's grace and the Holy Spirit, I was able to say no the last time. And it was the same thing
Woo.
with alcohol. In fact, kind of crazy, but it was more difficult to let go of drinking than to let go of drugs. And I think it's because of how
Mm.
prevalent and legal it is, and it's everywhere, you know.
Right. Right.
So eventually, eventually he gave me the power to put away the drink, to put away the drugs. And when it came time to turn myself in, this is gonna be crazy. When it came time to turn myself in, my lawyer said, you know, if you plead not guilty, it's gonna go to trial and it could get really expensive. And I mean, you really don't got a case. And so I walked into that Fresno County Superior Court, and when they read me the crime, I pleaded guilty. And at
Mm.
that moment, I remember that the two sheriffs got up and started walking towards me because it was a custom that after you plead guilty, they come and take you. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember I started to get scared when I saw them walk towards me. And at that moment, I remember I closed my eyes and I said, God, I told you I wanted to be a missionary. Take this fear away from me. And I felt calm and peace. And at that moment, the judge looked at me and said that my sentence was going to be 6 months of house arrest with no prison time. People were
Woo.
confused. The lawyer was confused. In
Mm.
fact, all my belongings were in boxes at my mama's house. I
Mm.
was ready to go in, but God had a different plan. And on the drive home from that courthouse, I said, God, if I can't serve you in prison, I'm going to serve you on the street. Please
Mm.
use me in any way, shape, or form. And I went to the Christian bookstore. I bought a bunch of books on Adventism. I was a new Seventh Day Adventist. Books on history, books on the historical movement of it, and all that stuff. And I sat home, and for 6 months, I read a bunch of Adventist books and the Bible. And for 6 months, it was kind of like my mini Bible college, right? For six
Yeah.
months,
Yeah.
I just sat there and I read, and God started to opening some special doors of doing
Mm.
some ministry in the same places I used to corrupt with my influence. At one point on Friday nights, I used to have 12 people in my little bedroom studying the Bible. These are people that I grew up with, people that were drug dealers, people that were drug addicts, and we would sit there, we would read the Bible, and people would be weeping, people would be crying, and it was just incredible how what God started to do almost immediately after I left that courthouse.
Woo. Woo. Wow. Wow. So you met this beautiful young lady somewhere along the way.
Oh man, yeah, yeah. Let's go ahead and get to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So So after my 6 months were done, um, after my 6 months were done, I got off house arrest. I still was serving a 5-year felony probation sentence, and it was just that weird time where you're on felony probation. You're a Christian now, and I did come across not like some not super encouraging people along the journey. I remember my name was brought up at church, at the local church I was attending, and my name was brought up for nomination for some leadership role or whatever, and my name was quickly shot down because they knew that I had a criminal history, you know, and
Mm.
and it's interesting how sometimes the place where you just really want to be accepted and loved, sometimes they're not so accepting and loving. So if you come across church members like
True,
that, let me
true.
tell you something, that are holding your background or your history. Don't sweat it. Keep moving forward, because that's
Come
exactly
on
what I
now.
did.
That's
And
not good,
so
good, good.
so I started getting involved with the local church. I started asking the pastor. I'm not sure who your pastor is, but I started asking the pastor to put me to work. I mean, some of the things I used to do for church service, on Friday mornings, I used to go and cut the yard. Like, that was my service.
Nice.
I used to go mow the yard. I was the person on Saturday mornings that would go and open up the gates and let people in.
Nice.
And I just wanted to be involved. And I want to encourage whoever's watching this just to get involved. I don't care if it's cutting
Mm.
the yard. I don't care if it's just opening doors. Just get involved with the church that you belong to. Reach out to
Yeah.
to someone that you trust to mentor you and to hold you accountable, because that's what really helped me. 2 years later, in 2014, I did my first summer canvassing, and I joined Youth Rush Ministries. It's a 10-week summer program where students go door to door sharing their faith with literature. And then after that, I went to this little Bible college out in the middle of nowhere in Arizona, and I did 2 years there. And
Nice.
after that, I was placed at my first church as a Bible worker in this little church plant that was started by this random girl that I would hear about every now and then. And so when I got to the church plant, I remember one of my mentors sat me down. He goes, "Marco, you're about to be working with the single woman here, and just keep it professional. You guys are working together." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, it's all good, it's all good." Well, I ended up marrying her. Um,
It was
so
all good, bro.
so we get there, and we were at, I Bible worked there at this little church plant in Patterson, California, and that's where I met Lisa. She had planted the church there along with other people, and started working there, giving Bible studies in the community, and serving the church, preaching, and all that other stuff. And it was there it was there that I received a letter in the mail one day asking me to present myself in court. Now, they were asking me to present myself in court on March of 2017. So this is about 4 years ago. And when I went to present myself in court, it was none other than a special appointment to see if I can get my criminal history erased, meaning that
Expunged.
I'll
Nice.
never have to tell a soul, if I don't want to, that I was actually a felon. And I remember being in
Wow.
that courthouse, Icky, and it was crazy because I had letters of recommendation, I had character letters, all these
Yeah,
letters and
yeah.
stuff like that. But the judge looked at me, and after he went over my case, he never asked for a single letter and granted me a full expungement of my criminal history. And it just reminded me of God's love towards the sinner, that when he comes and gives his life to Jesus, then Jesus
Woo.
takes him and all of their sins and erases them like if they've never sinned. And it was an incredible experience of now living criminal free. I don't have a criminal history anymore. It's been sealed. It's been put away. So, anyways, a year later, I get
Hey.
called to come down to Southern. Huh?
Yes, yes. Sorry, man. I'm
A
starting
year
to
later, I get
testify. Woo, doing a praise
yeah,
dance
yeah.
over
A
here.
year later, yep. A year later, I get called to come to Southern California, and that's when I knew. I was like, man, I don't know about some of you guys. Maybe you guys are okay with long distance relationships, but I can't do that long distance relationship. So my girlfriend and I knew that
Yeah.
if we weren't going to get married, we were probably going to put that on the back burner and just not move forward. And I prayed about it. I don't come from a home that was ever really necessarily married and or examples of marriage. It was a big deal for me, and for her too. But I asked her to marry me, and she was crazy enough to say yes. So that's almost 3.5 years ago. And
Yes.
so she was crazy enough to say yes. And so her and I came down to Southern California, and is where we now serve for Literature Ministries here in Southern California Conference.
Yeah. And
Crazy. This is the best. Oh, here, let me see him. So this is probably the best. This is the best thing that probably could have came out of Lisa and I. We got a little munchkin now.
yeah, look at that. Yes, look at that.
Man, I
Oh
can't.
man, he's gorgeous.
Yeah, he don't know he got a crazy dad, but that's okay. He will with time.
amazing,
So
amazing.
yeah, my baby boy was born
And of
five
course, right now
months
you
ago.
you are also academically on a journey as yourself, right? What are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm currently a student at Andrews University in their seminary program. I'm taking their master's in pastoral ministry.
Marco, let me ask you.
Yeah.
14 go back down here. 14-year-olds, you're between elementary, middle school, you're right in that area, just about to head into high school. You've already started dealing drugs. You have an absent dad in the house. Your mom is doing what she can. You got a brother who's really involved in extracurriculars. Could you ever guess that you would be here right now today, where you are today?
Just holding this little ball of flesh right here is a miracle of God. Like, being married to one woman is a miracle of God. Being sober, as many years that God has granted me to be sober, is a miracle of God. I mean, finishing my undergrad and now working on my master's program is a miracle of God. Like, and that's the crazy thing with God. Like just when we think, I mean, I thought that I was losing out on stuff by becoming a Christian back in the day. Little did I know that God wanted to give me everything that my heart desired. I mean, it's crazy to think. It's crazy to think, but you know, I just want to encourage someone that's listening to this, you know, that's thinking about you're counting the cost and you're saying, well, yeah, I can be all in for God, but this or but that or but this or but that. Let me tell you, my experience has taught me that we really don't know the type of plans He has for us. And if
Come
only we
on.
can get His perspective, we would literally drop into quickness anything and everything in order to follow the Lamb.
No eye hath seen, no ear hath heard. My friends, if you are watching along right now and you are just tempted to think that God doesn't really have in store for your life, I hope that you've heard Marco's story, see where God has taken him, and realize that God has a plan for your life as well. Marco, thank you so much. Bruh, we spent our whole time on this epic story. There was other stuff that we wanted to get to, but there was no time for it because this was really the meat of what we wanted to do. I do have a question for you that I'd like you to help us with. If you're watching along, we usually do an educational value piece. So here's the value piece here. I want to ask you, Marco, can you give us 3 tips, practical tips that someone can do today to help them overcome an addiction? As seeing as how you're professional at this.
I don't have no crazy degree in mental health or in addiction recovery, but let me tell you, I'm a recovered addict. So I probably should have a doctorate, like an honorary doctorate, you know.
That's what I'm saying, bro.
Tip number one that helped me in my journey is seek accountability, especially if you're dealing with like drug addiction, sex addiction. If you're dealing with those type of addictions, seek accountability, because that journey is so long and so uphill that you're going to need someone in your corner. You might need multiple people in your corner. I have multiple people in my corner that I call when I'm happy, that I call when I'm sad, that I call when I'm tempted, that I call when things are going great, but also when things are literally hell. So just have someone that you can call that's in your corner, that you trust, and that's spiritual. Tip number 2 is find the right programs. Don't be afraid of secular programs like Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with an issue, there are programs out there. I did 365 AA meetings in 365 days. Every single day I was at an AA meeting, and I found a community of people that will support me on my journey. Tip number 3
Powerful.
is
Mm.
when you relapse. Notice that I said when. It's a good chance you will. Hopefully you don't, but there's a good chance you will. When you relapse, get back up immediately. There's a
Come
tendency
on now.
when relapse happens, there's a tendency to want to
Yes.
binge, to want to be there for a while. And we're not even just talking about addictions of like sexual addictions or alcohol or drugs. I mean,
Yes. Yes.
even sin. Even sin, when you relapse and you fall into certain sin, it makes you just want to open up that can of worms a little big. You know why? Because I'm already here anyway. Get rid of that
If I
mentality.
get this
Get
donut,
back
I
up.
might as well order 3 more donuts. Let me just get the whole tray.
I ate a half a pizza yesterday, bro. But look, when you relapse, get back up immediately.
Come on now. Yes, yes, yes. There it is. Those are some 3 powerfully practical tips that you can start doing right now to help change your life tangibly when it comes to addictions. Number 1, get some accountability partners. If you ain't got somebody you can talk to, find somebody you can talk to. You need people you can count on who come to your aid, who will talk to you
Okay.
through stuff. Number 1, get accountability partner. Number 2, don't be afraid of going to a program of some sort. Do it. Do it. Do it. I know that as church folk, man, we get all nervous and shameful about like having to go to a program. Like, what will that family say? Or what will the church members say? Don't worry about them. We're talking about your health and your life. If you need a program, go to a program. And if the church is talking trash about you, shame on the church. We need to be gathering around our people, supporting them when they go to counseling, when they go programs. We got to have your back. So here, at least in Southern California Conference, we're going to work on making sure that we got our people's back. If you need a program, go to a program. And finally, number 3, when you fall, get back up and keep going. God's got your back. Marco, that's fire, my brother. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time with me. We are we're wrapped up on time. We've pretty much killed our hour together, my friends. I want to thank each of you for joining Marco and I. Marco, I want to invite you back, bro. Can we get another opportunity to come back so we can finish the rest of
Let me
our
know.
time that we want to talk
Let me
about?
know.
Awesome.
Let
I
me know.
actually want to spend a little time talking about your experience and how it affected your mental health, your emotional health. I want to talk about how God has taken you and where he's taken you since this transformation. I want to talk about how he's used both you and Lisa. Lisa is Marco's wife, amazing, phenomenal, fantastic wife, to do some amazing, beautiful ministries. So there's a ton of stuff we didn't even touch on today, but we will in the future when I bring Marco back on. My friends, thank you again for spending your hour with me. Marco, before we do leave, I would like to ask you, could you share some words of encouragement and inspiration for all those who are watching and who will probably catch this later as well? Could you share some words that would help encourage them on what God is doing in their life and in their world today?
Absolutely. I think if there's one thing that I wish I would have known earlier is definitely that don't let your past determine who you are today and determine who you're going to be. The truth is, we live in a broken world, and we're broken people. I know our hour ran out, but the things that you heard they have left some serious scars on me. But what I want to share with you is that God can do a new thing in your life. And just when you think there's nothing else to give him because of your mistakes, because of circumstances or environments, God can make you and shape you into something you've never dreamed of. So don't give up on him. Keep coming to him despite of who you are.
Hey, my friends, with an extension of that, I want to remind you, don't give up on yourself. God hasn't given up on you, so don't give up on yourself. I know you might be going through stuff, but he's got your back, just as he brought Marco through, just as he brought Moses through, just as he brought Joshua through. He'll bring you through. He's got plans for your life, and I pray that you be able to at least begin to experience that today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here at Tuesday Tea Time. Marco, thank you, my bro, for spending your Tuesday afternoon with us. And I'm sorry for all the racket you have to hear from my side of this wall, my brother. My friends, next week we're going to be hanging out with the young adults from the New Life Church plant that planted down here during the COVID season. So you're going to be hearing from these amazing musicians and young creatives doing this great stuff in the world. That is next Tuesday. You're not going to miss out in our convo together. But until that next Tuesday, I bid you farewell. Be safe and be good to each other. God bless you all. Thanks again, Marco. Thanks, everybody. Take care. This was Tuesday Tea Time.